Call the Alexandria City Council to order. I'd like to ask Reverend Emil Jones to do the invocation, and Mr. Johnson, would you do the pledge?
Let us pray. God, we thank you for the privilege of calling you Father. We ask that you would bless this gathering. May we display wisdom, compassion, concern for all, that none be left out, because you have not left us out. God, these men and women who are giving their time, energy, and effort to create a just and a fair society. Give them wisdom and strength as they take on the challenges. Bless us and strengthen us in unity and make us one people. Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Ms.
Mr. Lawson. Mr. Fowler.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Present.
Mr. Smith. Mr. Silver. Mr. Hobbs. Mr. Marshall.
Present.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Consent calendar. I'm going to send 14 to Public Works.
Send 16 to utility.
Oh, 21, you need to delay. Moving second.
Silver. Smith.
Moved by
Smith,
Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Silver. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Go on to section G.
F.
Yep.
Ordinances for final adoption, subject to a public hearing. Number 23, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the low bid submitted for cooling tower repairs for units 1, 2, 3, and 4 for DG Hunter Generating Station.
Moved by Mr. Silver, second by Mr. Johnson. Question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 24, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the low bid submitted for spun, pre-stressed wood pole equivalent concrete poles.
Moved by Mr. Smith. Second by Mr. Silver. Any question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 25, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a written cooperative endeavor agreement with the Louisiana Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism for the promotion of the annual barbecue competition, Queuing on the Red.
Moved by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 26, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to declare emergency repairs and authorize purchases to make repairs of a 36-inch ductile iron water transmission line at the International Paper Mill.
Moved by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
27, to consider final adoption of an ordinance amending ordinance number 78-2008 to allow dedication of a 15-foot wide utility servitude in North Side subdivision to one additional lot, Lot 23.
Moved by Mr. Smith. Second by Mr. Silver. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 28, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing supplemental agreement number 3 for McDonald Street and drainage improvements Phase 3.
Moved by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 29, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the lowest quote received from Williams Nursery and Landscaping for mowing of Esler Field landfill for the Urban Forester Department.
Moved by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 30, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the lowest quote received from Beaufort Enterprises doing business as Yankee Clipper for I-49 Greenbelt maintenance services for the Urban Forester Department.
Moved by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Silver. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 31, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the lowest quote received from Alpine Lawn and Landscape for landscape maintenance services for assorted public facilities for the Urban Forester Department.
Moved by Mr. Johnson, by Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, and second by Mr. Silver. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 32, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the quote received from Greens Park Service for landscape maintenance services for Rapids Trail for the Urban Forester Department.
Moved by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mr. Silver. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
33, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the quote received from Simpson Security Systems for the alarm system upgrade for the Alexandria Riverfront Center.
Moved by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
34, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to renew the existing contract for mosquito control, insecticide, chemicals, and related products for the street department.
Moved by Mr. Silver, second by Mr. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
35, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a cooperative endeavor agreement and to designate the mayor as the authorized representative of the city related to Louisiana capital outlay funds appropriated for renovation of medical business incubator and business development center.
Moved by Mr. Fowler,
Second.
second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
36, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a cooperative endeavor agreement and to designate the mayor as the authorized representative of the city related to Louisiana capital outlay funds appropriated for Sugar House Road, Eddie Williams Boulevard to Louisiana Highway 1, Phase 1 and 2.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Mr. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
37, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement for professional consulting services between the city and Morio, represented by its president, Maurice Moore, for assisting the city in embarking on a set of major capital projects.
Mr. Mayor, could you give us a little background information on this, please?
Moved by Mr. Fowler and second by Mr. Smith.
Okay.
Book item number,
Question? Discussion?
book item number 37, Mr. President, is for Morio LLC. If you look at the recitals under witnesses, especially those in bold, you'll see that this meets the new administrative criteria for determining that this is a value-added consultancy. It addresses a niche civil service doesn't provide or is not suited to address currently. It meets an articulable need. And the whereas paragraphs in front, you'll see those needs spelled out in very clear language. And then more particularly, you'll see that there is currently not permanent personnel for services of this, and it could constitute a continuing need, but probably will not. It also, we ensure the city has access and control to the programming and operations in the contract. And it fits, again, I won't read through them again, we talked about them earlier. It fits all of those items or a consultancy. In Mr. Moore's contract, I think the concern is that there's still a blank on page 3 where it would list rate. If the council would entertain looking at section 6, which is page 4, under duration, you'll see that this is a trial period contract from May 108 until January 09, and then can be renewed if the contract proves to be value added. In other words, over its term, we're saving more than we're paying out, which is a good approach to really making sure these contracts for consultancies are working. You'll also note that in section 8 on page 5, there's a special budgetary provision that caps the contract at $75,000 per year total, so that you know that in no case will it go over that amount. With those two sections, we think that we really have a need for it, but the lack of the number in section 2, we would ask that you still entertain passing the ordinance today with the following caveat, if you wish, that the administration is given the authority to engage Mr. Maurice Moore and Morio LLC, and that will work out the rates. There's two parts to the contract, Mr. Fowler. There's a part that would be an hourly rate for certain services that are spelled out in those paragraphs. We cap it at $125. It's going to be somewhere under that. We need to negotiate that with Mr. Moore, but it will not be above $125 per hour, and it will be likely lower and on a scale depending on the kind of work that he does. He's a chemist by trade.
Could we word it to not exceed 125?
You can place that in the ordinance on the hourly part, but we have a second part that Jim Ligon and Mario Lawson would authorize through planning and Department of Public Works. Jim Ligon is our building superintendent, that when we have items that need sealant issues or protective coat issues on those, there's going to be a schedule and an industry standard that would apply. This contract is also under our AFEED program, and we think it's important to go ahead and move forward. We have some need right now for it. With those caps in place, we think the public is fully protected, has full knowledge as of today of what monies we're talking about, and we think that you should move it for favorable passage at this time.
With that amendment in mind, or I'll move to amend it to word it to not to exceed $125 an hour? Is that right?
For the special work, and then whatever the schedule is that's set forth by Department of Public Works on other items. And I don't know.
And not to exceed $75,000.
Not to exceed in any case for
That's
all work,
already in the ordinance.
$75,000 per year. That's correct.
Okay.
So it's not open-ended, and it's a trial basis contract.
Just for the record, I mean, you kind of didn't gloss over, but you just very briefly mentioned some of the type things that they would be doing as far as protecting the assets of the city.
Yeah.
Could you just give us a couple of outline, or a couple of things that how we'll benefit from this?
Sure. At Jim Ligon's request, we've had a few issues with I think a tower and other items that aren't properly sealed. The notion here is that manufacturers, when we do our own public works, at times we have manufacturer recommendations and you just follow what's on the list, but they're not properly matching certain materials with the proper coating, and results in rust and problems for us down the road that costs us money. And that has occurred. Specifically, we would have this person to analyze surface coat protection for capital plans, buildings, and structures, and even more specifically, to have a plan of how to address those when they occur, so we're not finding out after the fact a few years that if we had had a different coating surface, something would have had a life of, say, 10 or 20 years, and it only had a life of 2 to 3 years before it needed to be recoated. This would apply in construction, remodeling, and repair of our products. We also want to utilize his services to make sure we're using environmentally friendly products and to match best practices with sealants and proper coating and paint products. We have other items in there, and Jim and I discussed it at some length. One of the things is, even with the fire relocation projects and all of those things, that when we're building, we're ensuring that we have an expert, a professional chemist, that is making sure that what we authorize through our contracts with professionals, and I guess they're supposed to do that in a sense, but what happens is that becomes one of those things lost in the translation, where you're not having someone look at it specifically. And I have to reiterate again, you're talking about a cap of 75 per year, plus it ends early, because we're already well into this year. So you have your trial period to see if this program is working that is well under that cap. So we think this meets all of our requirements for recommending a consultancy within a very strict framework.
Just as an aside and not a part of this, is there any way that we could take advantage of his services, maybe on an ongoing contingency basis for future projects to
Yes.
ensure that when we build something, we take the manufacturer's suggested coatings, et cetera, analyze them, and make sure we're doing the thing that best protects the city's assets?
Yes, we could, and he has a history in New Orleans and other places where he's done just that.
I move for the amendment.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Mr. Johnson. On the
Amendment.
amended, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we back to the original motion.
There was a motion made by Mr. Fowler, seconded by Mr. Silver.
Now we vote on it.
As
All in
Original
favor?
motion. Yes, sir.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Ms. Smith. Okay. Number 38, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the lowest quote received from Greens Park Service for Compton Park landscape maintenance for the Urban Forestry Department.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor?
Discussion.
Discussion.
Just as an aside on this, I think that since we've started doing the maintenance with the outside source, the bids on this each time have actually come down. And I think it's less to maintain the park now than it was when we originally had outside services do it. So this is a process that's paying off for the city, I think. So that's all.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 39 is delayed for 2 weeks. We'll go to 40, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement with Dr. Robert Smith to provide medical oversight of the Alexandria Fire Department Emergency Medical Services Program.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 41, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Louisiana Department of Economic Development's Small and Emerging Business Development Program to provide market technical assistance relating to the growth of small businesses in this area.
Move. Second.
Moved by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Fowler. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We go to committees.
Finance Committee, Mr. Lawson has no report. Public Works, Mr. Silver. Legal Committee, Mr. Hobbs has no report. Utility, Mr. Johnson.
No report.
Community Development, Mr. Hobbs. Personnel, Mr. Johnson.
No report.
Public Safety, Mr. Johnson.
No report.
A&E Review, Mr. Silver.
No report.
Economic Development, Mr. Lawson.
Mr. Lawson not here tonight, and as acting in his stead. Several months ago, we had a retreat hosted by the city administration, and we accomplished a lot, but there are a lot of unfinished things to be done. I would like to suggest to the president of the council and the chairman of the economic committee that they host a meeting not to last longer than that 1 day, sometime between now and our next meeting of the council, to get a report from the administration and the mayor as to what their general posture is on economic development for our area. There's been a lot of comment about different things that are available, and I'd like us to be brought up to speed. We would host it. It can be in town, it can be anywhere, as long as we don't spend much money.
I ain't spending much money.
But I would like to have that done and in place, hopefully within a week from this Saturday. You need a motion, or is that just a recommendation? That's
I'll move.
satisfactory?
Move.
I move it.
I'll second.
Second. Moved by Mr. Silver, second by
Will,
Mr. Fowler.
okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll get together on that. We can make it happen. Any other business?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, fine.
Ms. Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. As you all are aware, the administration published a strategy for workforce development initiatives last year, and we are moving forward with implementing some of the strategies in that plan. A couple of weeks ago, there was a panel discussion taped at the Coughlin Saunders Theater regarding workforce in the area, and it will be aired on the Louisiana Public Broadcast Station. It may already be airing. However, from that meeting, the community presented some things that they would like to see addressed from the agencies that are workforce development practitioners. We were approached by Louisiana Technical College to partner with them on a community initiative for getting workforce development out into the communities to the citizens, for those that are not accessing the services at the various agencies for a number of reasons, perhaps transportation or a lack of awareness of what services are available to them. So beginning on Monday, May 19th at the Broadway Resource Center, we will, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., we are hosting a job preparation and job readiness workshop for citizens in that community who are interested and who are either unemployed, underemployed, who are in need of information regarding employment services, what resources are available to them so that they can acquire skills, so that they can increase their skills. We are targeting a variety of people who are in need of services. This includes college graduates, high school graduates. If you are not a high school graduate, if you are in need of a GED, our intent will be to do an assessment survey with these individuals to find out what their needs are and to direct them to resources that are available. It will allow us to begin the community audit that we included in our workforce strategies to determine exactly what are the needs of the citizens and how the city can work with other agencies such as the Technical Community College System, the Department of Labor, the police juries, Career One-Stop Solution Center to provide them with the services that they need and ultimately increase the skills of the citizens in our local workforce. So while one group will be a part of the workshop, the other group will assess, and then we'll switch groups. So we're encouraging anyone who is in need of employment services, if you know of anyone, that we will also include some of our other partners who will be there to provide information about what is available if you are trying to become employed, if you need a promotion, if you've ever been on an interview and you felt inadequate or unprepared for the interview. And we know that a lot of people go through that. They may have the skills that they need but aren't prepared for the interview questions, for the job interview, or just unaware of where they can go. We will also continue this program throughout the summer. We're going to go to all the community centers. We will next target the Martin Luther King Center on Willow Glen, and then we'll proceed to Bolton Avenue or either the Royal Martin Center in the Sonia Quarter neighborhood. So our goal is to go into all the community centers of the city and provide these services to our citizens. Thanks.
Did that lady make it? She didn't come? The snakes?
Yeah, we can talk about that. The meeting's adjourned.
I want to ask her, when was the job fair? Can she reiterate on that? What date?
The first one is Monday, May 19th at the Broadway Resource Center.
Okay. Move it down.
4 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Motion.